Hello. In the words of John Bon Jovi, whoa, we're halfway there. Over halfway, in fact, because 53% of us have now been vaccinated for flu at SHSC. And a massive shout out to everyone that's helped us come so far, but we need to keep going. And we know that you will, because competition is hotting up in the Teams League table. Gender Identity Clinic, out of nowhere, have shot to a commanding 20% lead in the league table, and they're the first team to be within striking distance of that magic 100%. Who's going to challenge them? Well, it remains to be seen, but it could be your team. And as ever, a huge thank you to all of our peer vaccinators. They're the people that make all of this possible. And it's a big responsibility doing this amongst their day-to-day jobs, so really, we can't say thank you enough. Now, today we've got a very special guest joining us. It's our resident microbiologist, Rob Townsend. Imagine I'm on the fence. I'm not sure whether to get the flu jab or not. Why should I get it?
I mean, I'm always an advocate of the flu jab, as you all know, but I think this year, like no other, I think it's going to be even more important. We've had so many unknowns this year, starting from, back in January when COVID emerged out of China. There's so many unknowns. I think the one unknown you really don't want to encounter in this winter is, what is COVID plus flu going? How will I be if I catch both viruses? And I think that is one unknown that you really don't want to encounter, because no one knows what that will look like. But most experts agree. They think it'll be a pretty bad infection if you were to get both viruses at the same time. So this year, more than any other, I would say, please try do your best to knock out the one thing we can do something about right now, and that's influenza.
We've heard how dangerous coronavirus is, but how dangerous is flu?
Yeah, I mean, make no mistake, flu or influenza A in its own right is a very serious viral infection. So every winter we have patients on our from the complications of it, such as follow-on bacterial pneumonias, or just the flu itself, flu, influenza, pneumonitis. We have patients with those on ventilators every year in intensive care. Most of them are, as you would expect, and as we've heard about with COVID, a lot of them will be patients with comorbidities who may be older, but not all of them. Every year we see patients on intensive care who are young, fit adults who you wouldn't think would be struck down by a viral infection, and every year we see it. It happens. So yeah, influenza in its own right is a very nasty viral infection in some individuals.
If I don't have the jab, what symptoms might I notice that would tell me that I might have caught flu?
Symptoms in a way are a little bit like the onset of COVID in a way. You get a high temperature, typically higher than you get with COVID. The 37.8 for COVID tends to be higher than that for flu. Headache, muscle pains, you can get sore throats and coryzal symptoms, coughing, sneezing. As I say, muscle aches and back pains and headaches and fever, those tend to be the sort of hallmarks of influenza type infections.
But you can make a prediction that you won't get it if you do have the vaccine.
Oh, certainly, yeah, for sure. If you have the vaccine, your chances of acquiring influenza are vastly reduced. And also, if you do happen to acquire influenza, you, generally speaking, would get a much milder form, sort of like a cold or a bad cold, as opposed to the full-blown influenza symptoms, which one consultant once described to me as saying, well, with proper influenza, as opposed to a cold, proper influenza, it's 2 weeks. For the first week, you feel like you're dying, and the second week, you wish you had. And I think that's full-blown influenza when you've not got the protection of a vaccine. And I think if you do catch flu and you've had the vaccine, it's probably a very milder version of the flu. In fact, you hear a lot of people say, "Well, I had the flu vaccine last year, and I had flu." We have to remember as well, the flu vaccine covers against flu. It doesn't cover against all the other sort of milder versions of respiratory infections like RSV, rhinovirus, seasonal coronavirus as well. It only covers against flu, but flu is the most dangerous and the most severe of the winter respiratory viruses.
So it does work then, this jab. How effective is it?
Again, the effectiveness varies from year to year because the flu vaccine varies from year to year. Its makeup it is determined each year depending as to what flu strains are circulating, and that effectiveness obviously varies from year to year. But it is regarded as a very safe and very effective, probably one of the most effective vaccines that we have available. As I say, I can't give you an exact number because, as I say, it varies from year to year, but it's a very effective vaccine. And even if you do get flu, like I say, it's often a much more milder, more attenuated version of it.
You've said it's safe, but are there any side effects?
Yes, so most people, thinking back at the last 5 or 6 years that I can remember that I've had it, I have it every year, as you can imagine. The last 5 or 6 that I can remember, I can't remember any side effects whatsoever. Immediately after the jab, a slightly achy arm. That's probably the commonest one. Is your arm aches a bit, as it would after any vaccine. Some people get slightly reddened area around where the jab is in their arm. Some will get a mild sort of slight temperature and a bit of a cold-like symptom for a few days. Those are probably the commonest side effects. But as I say, that I can't really remember having any side effects for the last several years that I've had the vaccine.
Sounds like a good deal compared to 2 weeks of feeling like death.
Oh, most definitely, yes. Influenza is a miserable infection to have. It really isn't nice at all.
Well, it all sounds thoroughly unpleasant, and I've got my jab, so I'm hoping to avoid that this year. But I'll make sure to get it next year as well, because as you say, you do need to get an update each year.
You do, and also remember as well that each year you have it, you sort of get an additive effect. So while the flu strains can vary year on year, your best way of protecting yourself against that is to have the seasonal flu jab every year. So you're building up immunity to various flu strains.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Rob, and sharing your wisdom. That's all from Rob, and that's all from us. We'll see you next week for more Talking Flu. Bye-bye.